Is it, yeah, is it too early to say it? It is. Fuck it, I'm saying it anyway. DC's back, bitches. So Aquaman tells the story of Arthur Curry, who is half human, half Atlantean, as he has to hunt down an ancient hidden trident so that he can command the seven seas as the true ruler of Atlantis. Well, here we are again, everybody. DC has released a new movie. I never know what I'm going to say whenever I go out to see a DC movie because there's been so many that have just crushed my heart and my soul down to fucking dust. But there's been some damn good ones too, so I will be honest, despite the fact having very little interest in the character himself, I always probably had the most faith in the Aquaman movie since the announcement of it because of the director James Wan. We've known this movie is coming for years now. They announced it way back when, might have even been before Batman v Superman came out, when they were casting for Justice League and they were laying out all these movies they were going to give us, which they have delivered one. But Aquaman was the one where, even closer that it got to the release date, it was the only DC movie in a long time that didn't have any drama attached to it. No reshoots, no people quitting, no directors quitting, no other directors being brought in, no recutting of the movie with a movie trailer or hacking down the runtime by half to fit it into more theaters. None of that bullshit that DC has made a mockery of themselves doing with the Snyder movies mostly. Now we get into Aquaman. Has my faith in James Wan and this Aquaman movie been worth it? Or is my soul yet again crushed into dust? It was worth it! Yes! Oh, I'm so relieved and happy that I can tell you all Aquaman is awesome. Awesome. Not just good. Awesome. The movie is much better than I actually thought it was going to be. I always thought it was going to be good, but I was thinking maybe it'd be like one of those lukewarm goods that I had as far as like, you know, the Furious 7 that James Wan handled magnificently, by the way, because of the death of Paul Walker. But then you get into Aquaman and I was like, okay, it's probably going to be about the same thing. There's going to be some cool action, cool CGI. Jason Momoa was probably going to be cool. Aquaman was leaps and bounds better than I ever thought it could be. So let's get into it, starting off with the positives of Aquaman. Let's talk about the cast and characters. Jason Momoa, perfect casting for Aquaman. Not only does he totally shred the stigma that Aquaman sucks or Aquaman's not cool or Aquaman's a joke. Yet, calm down, DC fans. I know that you have to read the comics. He's a lot cooler than it seems. But on its surface, the dude that talks to fish and wears a swimsuit is not necessarily as cool as Batman. Jason Momoa changes that. Jason Momoa is a badass. Jason Momoa has charisma galore. From the very beginning of the movie, the dude just owns the role. You can tell that he is having a blast with the role. He cannot wait for every single scene that comes after this so that he can be even more fun and even more badass. Jason Momoa as Aquaman is the biggest heart of the movie. And you absolutely had to cast somebody like that. You had to cast somebody that has a physical presence, that looks like a badass, like he could kick someone into the fucking dirt with ease, and also has that kind of cool, laid-back, beer-chugging surfer dude kind of attitude, because that just fits this modern era of superhero films and a character like Aquaman. So he can have both. He can be the cool, stoic king, Shakespearean type character, but he can also be the cool, badass guy that you just want to tip a few back with at a local bar. Nice little duality there in the character. I also really liked Mara, played by Amber Heard. Now, she's a little bit crazy in her personal life, but I've never really seen her do a movie that's this in the public eye in one of these big blockbuster movies, and I wasn't sure how well she was going to do. She did damn good. She was a really good character, coming from a different line, a different one of the seven seas, a different kingdom, if you will, than Atlantis, trying to bring Arthur Curry there to save the seven seas and prevent this huge war. And she totally conveyed all of that, kind of betraying her father and her kingdom for what she believed was right. She conveyed all of that. She's very good to look at. Amber Heard has always been a gorgeous woman, so the fact that you have somebody like that paired with Jason Momoa, you know some sparks are going to fly. And it doesn't hurt that their chemistry is very good with each other, so I'll give credit to both those actors for that. Every scene where they're together, which is most of the movie, they work very well off of each other, and I look forward to seeing both of them in future movies. Now, getting into the villains, we have Patrick Wilson, who has been one of James Wan's long collaborating actors. I think this is his 5th film with him, so you got the 2 Insidious movies, the 2 Conjuring movies, and now this. Patrick Wilson's one of those guys that has always been good to me. He's never really been an actor that's gotten a ton of credit, but I don't think I've ever seen the dude give a bad performance, no matter how good the movie is or how bad the movie is. I've seen him do a lot of different characters. He's not a stranger to the comic book world. He was in Watchmen, and I think he was great in that too. Him playing Ocean Master, King Orm, the half-brother to Arthur Curry, the pure blood brother that feels he is the true heir to this kingdom, but has to get rid of the half-blood bastard in order to get everybody on his side and become what they call Ocean Master, who is the guy who commands all of the 7 seas. He was a really good villain. He's not like completely original. Like, his motivations, we've seen time and time again, the guy that wants the throne. We saw it earlier this year. But I feel like his performance and some of the motivations behind that motive, as far as feeling like he's the true heir that never quite got the credit, you know, Nicole Kidman, which I'll get into in a minute, everything tied with her character being kind of like this baggage on him. He was a really interesting character, and they did a good job at giving him very understandable reasons why he would take on Aquaman. Even though Aquaman's our hero, you do kind of understand where King Orm is coming from, and those are the best villains, the ones where you can kind of see their side of the story. You can see that they don't think that they're the villain. Those are always good villains. So, Patrick Wilson as a performance and the character of Ocean Master, very good.
The war is coming to the surface. You are not going to win this.
Billions will die unless you help us.
You also have the secondary villain of Black Manta, who, from what I understand, because I'm not a big comic book reader and I haven't read any Aquaman, is kind of like the Joker of the Aquaman world. Correct me down below if I'm incorrect, but from what I remember, that's basically what I saw about the character whenever they first cast him, is Black Manta is like one of the big Aquaman arch enemies. And they start setting him up in this movie, and he starts as a secondary villain, and I thought that he was a great secondary villain. When you get more than one villain in a movie, people always bring up Spider-Man 3 as the example, even though I love that movie. They bring up the example that you're going to have too much. You're going to be juggling too much, there's going to be too much going on, too many plot threads, too much focus on different people. Just make one villain. I think Black Manta was a great secondary villain because it ties in with the beginning of the movie when we first get to see Jason Momoa board this submarine and start saving people, and the scenes in the trailer. Permission to come aboard. Then you have, throughout the movie, this growing motivation, again, just like King Orm, that you understand, even though Black Manta is full-on evil, you understand why he has this vendetta against Arthur Curry. And again, that just makes for a very interesting villain when you can get totally behind their motivations, no matter how good or evil they are, and see where they're coming from. His design of his costume, although comic book accurate for the most part, is a little bit silly, but within the tone of this movie, it doesn't really stand out as a silly moment because this movie kind of relishes in how silly everything is and owns it and goes for it. So I think Black Manta was a damn good secondary villain, and I look forward to seeing more from him, just like I look forward to seeing more from every other character I've just talked about.
Who the hell are you?
Now let's talk about Nicole Kidman for a second. This is Arthur Curry's mother. While she doesn't have a ton of screen time in the movie, I think she is one of the most important pieces to Aquaman. She is one of the most bright, shining lights of heart in this story. Jason Momoa brings a lot of heart to the character of Aquaman. Nicole Kidman brings a lot of heart to the story itself. The movie starts off with her story, where she basically left Atlantis because she didn't want to have this arranged marriage with the current king of Atlantis. Fell in love with Arthur Curry's father, who is a lighthouse keeper. Ended up having Arthur Curry, stayed there in secret for years, and then whenever she was found out, had to leave to save them, to keep them in secret, because it was this arranged, or there was this marriage, this love, and this child that should have never been as far as Atlantean rule. Then she goes back to Atlantis and just has to bite the bullet and have this arranged marriage with this guy that's been looking for her for years, and you have this dynamic with Arthur Curry's father where he goes to the end of the dock every single day at sunrise to see if she's going to come back, because because she promised him she would. Then you have all the Shakespearean stuff with King Orm and Aquaman, where you have the bastard son, you have the full-blood son, and they're kind of battling it out for not only the throne, but who had the most right to be. Where Aquaman, as far as Atlantis is concerned, should have never been. He's like this abomination, and King Orm, who's just fucking whacked out of his head to a degree, even though he's pure blood, he's a total prick. All that stuff, all tied around Nicole Kidman's character, all of it tied around all the themes they go for with her and her love, her son, her other son. All that stuff is great. And even the little bit of screen time that she has, whenever they get back to Nicole Kidman and her storyline and how it ties into all these characters, that's when Aquaman really rises up across the board more than your typical comic book film, and has a lot more heart, a lot more emotion, and a lot more depth than most movies in the genre. Now, as far as the action, badass all across the board. Somehow James Wan manages to have a lot of different styles of action scenes throughout this movie, from hand-to-hand combat to trident combat to full-on warfare with all these different wild oceanic creatures, to chases across rooftops in Italy, I believe it was Italy, and all these different styles of things that he brought to not only Furious 7, but also the very underrated movie Death Sentence. All the different action set pieces that he brings to Aquaman, awesome across the board. And somehow, even though we've seen types of action scenes like this time and time and time again, he finds a way to not only make them engaging and exciting and fun and fast-paced, but they feel unique. It's the way that he shoots them, the way that he has like wide angle shots where he'll actually have long running shots where it doesn't feel like that cut fu bullshit where they're cutting around all the editing mistakes or all the bad choreography to try to make it seem like they have a good scene. No, James Wan stays there. He's like, look at this scene, bitch, and just stays there for a long time and just lets you relish in how cool it is. Awesome action across the board. And then you get into the CGI. I have no fucking idea how headache-inducing this movie must have been to create with all the CGI that they had to use. You can't make an Aquaman movie without it being like 80% CGI because it's all underwater. They have to have the hair flowing effects of underwater. The clothes or capes or whatever they're wearing has to have that free-flowing effect. They have to kind of make their voice have this different reverb to where they're underwater, and it's not really overbearing at all to me, but they have to kind of shield the voice a little bit to make it sound like it is in a much lessened factor, like when you put your lips in the water and you're trying to talk. They have this weird effect they put on the voices to distinguish when they're underwater and above water. All the oceanic creatures, all the creature effects, badass stuff. There's even a couple creatures where you could tell that James Wan is dipping into his horror roots to figure out what did he want to do to bring these creatures to life. All the warfare. There's even like, I take this lightly, but Star Wars style ships going around underneath water, where they have different kingdoms that have different vehicles and different things that they ride around in. Even Black Manta's got like this little stealth Manta looking thing. There's all kinds of different shit that is all computer generated in this movie. And with the exception of maybe one or two moments, and I mean moments, here and there, the CGI is damn near flawless all across the board. Like, I haven't seen CGI this convincing for the majority of a movie since maybe Avatar. It's that level of good. So many colors. It's just a vivid, bright world that he brings to life in most of this movie, all through computer-generated shit. That's usually something where you find out a movie's gonna be all CGI, you're like, oh, it's gonna feel like a video game, it's gonna feel like a cartoon, there's gonna be characters that are gonna take me out of the movie. I didn't have any of those issues with Aquaman. I thought it was a damn good job. So whoever the fuck did the visual effects for this movie, they deserve a pat on the back or an award. Like, if you don't see Aquaman in the Oscars for best special effects, there's something seriously fucking wrong. And now let's talk about the story a little bit. Yes, it is a story where elements of it we have seen quite a few times. This is a very king in his kingdom, Shakespearean, battle for the throne style movie that we have seen quite a few times. But the style of Aquaman is what makes their version of that story feel unique all throughout the movie for the most part, at least for me. I've heard some reviews that compare it pretty unfairly, in my opinion, to Black Panther, almost like Aquaman should answer for why it goes for the same types of themes, even though they were made right alongside each other. And both of the origin stories for not only Black Panther, but Aquaman is true to this type of story. So they're not just, it's not like they were looking over, on their desk at Marvel and just copying notes down. Aquaman, yes, has some of the same themes as Black Panther, as well as many other movies that came along long before Black Panther did. But it feels unique to me because of the world building, because of the way that they build Atlantis and the other kingdoms. And you have so many different worlds going on underwater. Atlantis is like kind of the hierarchy one. Then you get into Dolph Lundgren and his whole thing where it's like he's almost like the Spartans of the sea. They're the badasses. They're the ones that hold most of the guns. Then you get into the rejects, the ones that turn into monsters in the trenches, and it's like hell under. There's so many different ways that James Wan brought the ocean to life throughout this, that even though it's about a king and his kingdom, it doesn't just feel like a stock story. It feels like it goes so many different directions. It even feels like an Indiana Jones movie at times, when Aquaman has to find this long lost legendary trident from the first king of Atlantis that everybody thought was a myth, and it turns out to be real.
We're getting close now.
Oh yeah? Close to what? Dying of thirst? There's no way Atlanteans were this far inland.
Check this place out.
And they have to go to various cities trying to find clues on how to find this trident. Totally feels like an Indiana Jones movie. So you get DC movie, you get fish out of the water, no pun intended, movie where Aquaman has to go back to this kingdom that he never felt a part of and sort shit out because King Orm's got a hard dick for just killing motherfuckers. Then you get the Indiana Jones stuff about this adventure, these two people out there finding these, artifacts. Then you get into a war movie where you have all these different kingdoms coming together, clashing against what to do about the surface world, and the surface world getting involved to a degree. All of that stuff woven together with a somewhat typical story of a king and his kingdom to bring to life the story of Aquaman, which to me, once again, feels like a very unique, fresh take on a familiar story. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, Justice League. The movie doesn't even acknowledge Justice League's existence. It doesn't say anything about Batman or Superman. There's no cameos. There's no little Easter eggs, at least that I caught, about Wonder Woman or Green Lantern or this bigger universe that DC and WB was obsessed with building as fast as humanly fucking possible. It doesn't even acknowledge that. This is an Aquaman movie. And I have a feeling that's probably going to be the tone of the DC universe for the foreseeable future, at least for a while. And that's totally the direction that they should go. You can have your feelings about the movies that we already have. They all have people that love them and people that hate them equally. You know my thoughts. I love Man of Steel. I really like the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman. I love Wonder Woman. I think Suicide Squad and Justice League suck ass. And the theatrical cut of BVS, oh my God. But being that it's such a divisive start and such a half-ass start and just such a gigantic mockery that they made of themselves with how they were trying to just rush to catch up to Marvel and do everything the wrong way, they deserve all the success and lack of success that they got. Now DC really does feel like it gets a fresh start from here on out with the way that they executed Aquaman, and not really deleting what came before it, but just not really paying attention to it, not wasting time or energy talking about it. You know what I mean? We don't talk about those over there. This is Aquaman and the future of Aquaman. And it's probably going to be that way for a while. And for a fan of the DC universe, and for mostly a fan of what we've gotten from WB so far, I actually think that's a good approach. Now let's talk about some of the negatives and mixed elements that I got out of Aquaman. Now, first and foremost, I'll start with the stuff that didn't really bug me, but it is noteworthy. The humor is going to test the subjectivity of humor very hard with a lot of audiences. There's going to be people that's going to walk in that's going to laugh throughout this movie, and there's going to be people that came with them in the same party that's going to groan at every single joke this movie makes. It's all going to depend on your sense of humor. For me personally, there was maybe 3 or 4 jokes that I genuinely laughed at. The rest of them I just kind of smirked at. There was none to me that felt embarrassing or cringeworthy or what the fuck. Like, I've seen some reviews say that there's like moments in the movie that just made me want to throw up. I didn't see any of that, so I don't know if they're just exaggerating or if that's just the subjectivity of humor. There's a line in the movie where, there's a whole scene where they have to add water to this artifact because it's in the Sahara Desert and it used to be an ocean, so she has to bring a drop of water out of Aquaman's head. and drop it onto this artifact to activate it, and Aquaman drops a line about, that was a lot of trouble, we could have just peed on it. And I didn't laugh, but my kids did. So that just tells you right there too that they're trying to widen the appeal of these movies as well. Whereas BVS especially was very dark and very deep and heavy and, you know, talking about all kinds of different themes and got Christ imagery and all kinds of crazy shit in there that mostly appealed to adults, and kids pretty much just wanted to see the fights. You get to Aquaman and they have a little bit more of a wide appeal where you have things that's going to make adults laugh, like any sex jokes, and then you have things that's going to make kids laugh, like pee jokes. So to me, that's not embarrassing. That's just them widening their appeal so that the whole family can enjoy Aquaman, and my whole family did. But just take that as a warning. The humor is something that's going to be a question mark for every single person that walks into Aquaman. Another element that I'm still kind of on the fence about, even though I think that they're doing the right approach with the direction that they're going with Aquaman, there is part of me that is a little bit worried that now the tone that they tried to force into Justice League and now the tone that Aquaman is going to be the tone going forward in the DC universe. They didn't completely succeed when they were trying to do this, but I appreciated the fact that DC was at least trying to do things to distance themselves from the MCU and the Fox Marvel movies. They were trying to be more mythic, a little bit deeper, a little bit more epic in scale, and, you know, a little bit more grandiose and a little darker. The fact that it feels like, because of a lot of other factors that have nothing to do with any of that approach, fucked up Batman v Superman in the theaters and really fucked up Justice League, it feels like they're going to blame the tone and everything like that they were going for, and they're just going to try to be as lighthearted and family friendly as possible going forward. And even though I enjoyed that for Aquaman, and there are some characters in the DC universe like Shazam that I think I'm really going to enjoy that for, I am nervous that this is going to be very MCU template after a few more movies. I feel like if we get this tone for a Superman movie and this tone for a Batman movie and this tone for a Green Lantern movie, it's gonna really irritate the fuck out of me that all of a sudden we had this very unique take on the comic book universe as far as films go, and now we kind of have to do what the other guys did because these movies fucked up because we couldn't keep our hands off of them. Not a negative against Aquaman, just again, an asterisk out there depending on what kind of fan you are for the DC movies. If you like all that deep, dark, kind of grandiose stuff that mostly Zack Snyder was going for, this might not work for you, and in the future, it does make me nervous for what movies are gonna work for me. And one small little nitpick that I did have in this movie, there are a couple of logic issues that really jumped out to me while I was watching it. One of them I will give credit to Brian Lomax for, because I watched his review, and I don't know if I didn't watch his review and see him point this out, if I would have noticed it in the movie, so I'm gonna give him credit just to not step on my own toes, or step on his toes rather. But there is an element to Mira's powers where she can control water and other liquids, where she can make them do whatever she wants. She can make little funnels, she can shoot them like shards. Any liquids. She pulls the sweat beads off of Aquaman's entire body to make a water droplet, for Christ's sake. She has full control of all liquids in her surroundings. But the main brutes of these movies, the grunts that go after Aquaman and go after Mira, are these oceanic soldiers that are wearing like these Atlantean armor suits that have a faceplate where the inside of the suit has water inside of it, and it's kind of like by magic held in so that they can breathe. And every time they got into a fight, I'm wondering why the fuck Mira isn't just using her powers to manipulate the water inside of these guys' suits and make the fight over in that. I mean, I know that to a movie you have to let logic kind of lie for a little bit so you can have these long drawn out badass action sequences. That's why I'm saying it's a nitpick. But it does bother me a little bit throughout the runtime when you see them struggling with these soldiers and you're like, okay, why don't you just pull the water out of their suits and then they would just sit there and choke? Or why don't you crush their fucking suits with all the water? Why don't you send them away? There's things that didn't quite make sense with how Mira's powers work and how these guys' suits work and why they were such a threat. And then there was one more moment like towards the middle of the movie that I literally looked at and I was like, that's just stupid. There's plenty of times in this movie where Aquaman and Mira fall great distances. They jump out of a fucking plane, for Christ's sake, and just pow, hit the floor like a bowling ball, but because they're gods, it doesn't even faze them. That's why they don't bother with the parachutes. And there's times like in the middle of the same scene where Black Manta is chasing Aquaman and he launches this little plasma beam and it knocks Aquaman off this huge cliff, falling down like hundreds of feet to smack down onto this roof, and then immediately after that he almost rolls and falls off the roof, and he's holding on by one hand and he looks down scared like, oh my god, I can't fall, at like a 2-story drop. So that moment in particular, and he's struggling to get back up so he doesn't fall and hurt himself, I was like, 5 seconds ago the motherfucker fell like 80 stories, now he's worried about a 2-story drop. Again, nitpicks, but in the middle of the movie, whenever it just kind of stops like a brick, I was like, what the fuck, that makes no sense. It's worth noting. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed Aquaman. I expected it to be good. I did not expect it to be great. I don't know where this is gonna lie as far as my ranking of the DC films, and I'm kind of struggling, to be honest with you, so go ahead and get scared for those of you that are really, really Marvel fanboys. I'm struggling to figure out if I like this one or if I like Infinity War better. Infinity War up to now is my favorite comic book movie of the year. Aquaman just delivered on that level for me, so I'm gonna stew on that for a little while before I drop my ranking, but just to let you know, that is how good I think this movie is. Depends on your tastes, of course, depends on how much you like the characters and what kind of a tone of a movie that you're gonna go for, but as far as pure entertainment, delivering on themes, overarching storylines that wrap up beautifully in the third act between Nicole Kidman, Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, all of that stuff, I thought that the movie was just great start to finish, with a few minor nitpicks as my only negatives. So if you are a DC fan and you've been fucked over continuously by Warner Brothers, have faith and go check out Aquaman.
I'm no leader. I'm not a king.
Atlantis has always had a king. Now I need something more.
But what could be greater than a king?
A hero.
So if you're a fan of DC, a fan of Aquaman, or you just want to check out one more superhero movie before 2018 comes to a close, please take your whole family out and check out Aquaman. And whenever this bitch hits the shelves, go out and buy it. So what did you guys think of Aquaman? Where does this land in your DC ranking? Did you enjoy the tone of the movie? Did you think it was a little bit too soft and a little bit too lighthearted? Did you like Jason Momoa? Put all of your thoughts on Aquaman down in the comment section below, guys, and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed. Check out in the video description below for social media links like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for cool Cody Leach merchandise designed by Woody Bowen, who also designed this shirt for Drum Dums. And you can check out my Patreon page as well, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out the rest of my videos, including my previous DC reviews and rankings, you can check that out by clicking right over here.